Public Affairs very much thanks Residco, our sole corporate underwriter, for helping to make the production of this show possible.
Say Chicago's in trouble. We've said it in other shows, they can't file for bankruptcy. The Illinois legislature could give them the power, Chicago and other cities across the state, to file for bankruptcy, but they haven't. If they do file for bankruptcy, it's in federal court, then they have the power to cut benefits, even if the Constitution's not amended. But that doesn't help the state because the state seems unlikely to be able to have the power to file for bankruptcy, but they can amend the Constitution with the consent of the people. And if they amend the Constitution to cut the pension benefits, well, then they have some play. Then they have some leeway.
Well, but I would challenge you and say, why would the people give you that consent if they're told, we're balancing the budget, we're fully funding the pensions, we're being fiscally responsible? They are not being told that, hey, we don't have enough money to pay what we need to in the pension plans. We are really not balancing the budget because we're shorting the pension plans. If they knew that truth, and if they knew the truth that, well, if we went ahead and funded what we should, we have to cut X services, we have to cut Y benefits, we have to raise taxes. If they knew that, then there might be energy for people to say, we need to amend the Constitution.
Well, and they also might want to tell them that the current pensions for teachers in Illinois, out of the TRS fund, and some come from different funds elsewhere, some of the state, but teachers outside of CPS come from those funds. And those current pensions at retirement age start $59.60, and that starts at almost $80,000 a year. So you're cutting from $80,000, and most people in Social Security who don't have these defined benefit plans, don't work for the government, didn't work for the government, they're looking at retirement annual pensions of about maybe $18,000, $20,000, $22,000, 4 times as much for teachers. University workers, again, WirePoints tells us that's current pension starting at 59 for university workers, 70,000. And the past payout, if they live the expected time, that's $2 million. That's a lot of money. If you want to, again, the choice will be pay these pensions, which are rather high, cut the benefits, which maybe you could do, cut other current spending, or raise taxes. It's just the math. And the same thing with the city of Chicago, pension benefits of career city workers, police, $80,000 a year, firefighters, $97,000 average current pension at retirement. Again, at 59 or 60, everybody else, they start their retirement later in Social Security. So we have kind of a two-class society, people who work for government, people who don't. Is this fair? Is it fair?
It doesn't seem fair.
But the main thing you're saying, tell the people the truth.
Tell the truth.
Let them decide. They'll tell you what you should do. Cut pension benefits, cut current spending, raise taxes. Berkowitz is my name, and politics is our game. Well, thank you so much for coming back. Some of you have seen our part 1 of our show with the national expert in accounting, Sheila Weinberg. She is the founder and CEO of Truth in Accounting. You can find out more about him about truthinaccounting.org. But you just stay tuned to this show. Whatever we didn't cover that's really key in part 1, I promise you, we'll get there in part 2.
The governor and the previous governors have not truly balanced the budget, but they have came out and said that they've truly balanced the budget. So then the electorate think, oh, well, we must be doing fine. And as somebody who advocates for tax and spending policy, you might advocate one way based on, oh, I think that we have fully funded our pensions, we have balanced the budget. Or when you went to the voting booth last time to vote for governor, he said, I balance the budget every single year I'm in office. Well, then again, you're probably going to vote for him if that's the case. Oh, he's being fiscally responsible. But the truth is that he hasn't been fiscally responsible because he hasn't truly balanced the budget, because he hasn't fully funded the pensions. And if he had to fully fund those, then he would have had to cut services or benefits elsewhere, and or he would have had to raise taxes. Both of those options aren't very popular with the voters. But because he didn't have to make those choices, because he didn't truly balance the budget, people again went to the voting booth thinking everything was fine. Oh, and on top of that, people might have bought in bonds of the states going based upon his discussion.
Which would mean the risk of those bonds is higher than was represented to them because he didn't tell you about this amount that's being put in the pensions was simply the statutory amount, not the amount the science would say, the actuaries would say.
Now, if you look at the bond offerings, which again is a 300 to 600 page document, it is mentioned in there, but he has to be truthful outside the bond offerings also. And also, any comment that he makes, a public address, a press conference, a budget, those have to be truthful comments. And by saying fully funded, I have balanced, I would say that those are misleading comments.
So in this, if you look at the budget, you say it's got to come from somewhere else because in this proposed 2026 budget with general funds of about $454 billion, 26% is going to education in that proposed budget. And this is data you've looked at and you've analyzed. And the pension system is about 20%, and healthcare 17%, human services 22%, government services 9%. So where's it coming from, Governor? If you got to get that and make it up, you're taking it out of education in the future.
Yep.
You're revising this budget, taking it out of healthcare, human services, government. It's got to come from somewhere, or you got to raise taxes. So I think what you're saying, Sheila, is just level, just tell the truth and tell people they're going to have to. This pension stuff is crowding out some other spending at some point. You got to take it away, or you're crowding out the private budget of individuals because they're going to have to pay more in taxes.
Yes.
Or you're going to have to cut benefits, which, as we've shown in the other shows, the state of Illinois doesn't allow you to do that under the state constitution unless you amend the Constitution.
Yeah, but why would people think that we need to amend the Constitution if they're told everything is fine? I'm balancing the budget, we're being responsible, we're fully funding the plan. If he was more honest with us, then we could go ahead and go, oh, well, we might need to make adjustments. We might need to raise taxes. We might need to cut elsewhere. Or we might need a constitutional amendment to balance the budget, to adjust the benefits. But there's no reason to do that at this point, according to what he is saying.
Right, because he hasn't told them there's a shortfall. We're telling them there's a shortfall.
Yes.
We're telling if you want to cut benefits under this Constitution, you got to amend the Constitution. We're telling them if you're the city of Chicago, for instance, you have a similar shortfall, right?
I would say a similar
smaller,
it's
but
smaller,
in
but I
absolute
would
numbers,
say
but it's a shortfall
it's a more
nevertheless, right?
immediate shortfall, and that the city of Chicago's pension plans are due to run out of cash. One of them is due to run out of cash in 3.4 years. Right. Now, what does that mean? That means that the plan is no longer going to have enough money to pay benefits. So then what's going to happen? Where are they going to get the money to pay benefits? Right. If they're constitutionally guaranteed, then they're going to have to raise taxes or cut elsewhere, services or benefits, or borrow money.
But Chicago's pension shortfall through the end of 2023, I believe, has grown to $53 billion.
Yes, yeah.
$53 billion. And there are 5 funds, and their funding has collapsed for all 5. They, not too long ago, 10, 20 years ago, was 70% to 100%. Now those 5 funds, I think, range in funding from 20 to 40%.
And they have a similar funding schedule that the state has, again, where they're only funding
the statutory amount.
Statutory amount that is not what the actuaries say should be funded.
So the city's in trouble, perhaps with the SEC and others who have oversight here, the law, so to speak. The state's in trouble.
And they're in trouble. The city's in trouble because they're going to run out of money very quickly.
And look, we're not the only place that's had this problem. Pennsylvania has that problem, but there, in December 24, the district attorney from Allegheny County has sued the retirement board for Allegheny County and sued the board because they're not putting in the right amount. And so they're going to run out in 14 years or so, according to that complaint. Right. And they've already, along the way, when this has been called to the attention of the board, they've already raised or increased the employees' contributions, to my understand, for that county, the highest across the country. So but they've sued, that district attorney has sued, state's attorney of Cook County might have the power over Chicago to sue, hasn't been done. The Attorney General of the state of Illinois, I guess, would be the comparable person to, that would be Kwame Raoul. Kwame, come on and tell us we're wrong, okay? Because
I think
isn't it true that the state has a problem just like Allegheny County has a problem?
I believe the gentleman, the district attorney he's suing on behalf of his secretary.
He has the one person, but I think he's suing on behalf of the retirement fund that funds the Allegheny County employees. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's my understanding of it. Yeah. So he only has one employee named, but I think it's broader because the action he wants is to make it actuarially sound.
Yes.
Same concept. Yes. They're doing the same thing. They're not making it actuarially sound, right. And they've sued. So the Chicago police, under this, if it's analogous, I would imagine somebody on the Chicago Police Retirement Fund, which is running at about 22% funded. This fund in Pennsylvania, I think, is about 40% funded. Yeah. So in a sense, they are in much better shape, and yet they're saying they're running out, and it requires not waiting. You have to start fixing it now. So for Chicago, it would be even more so, wouldn't it?
Yeah, the 22%, to bring it down to what people can understand is they're 22% funded. That means for every single dollar that they've promised, they only have 22 cents set aside to pay for the benefits. So there's 78 cents that they have of benefits that they have promised that they have no idea where they're going to get the money to pay.
Again, and it's the actuarial amount. Governor Kwame, it's the science. Because we've heard so much from the Pritzker administration, the Kwame Raoul administration, they follow the science. Haven't we heard that over the years?
Yeah, we've heard that, and also we've heard the governor talk about people who contradict what he's saying, and saying that he needs to put more money into the pension plans. He calls them gadflights, he called them belly achers. But keep in mind, what we're saying is not our opinion, it's the opinion of the state pension plans actuaries. So when he calls these people who call him out on this, he's actually calling out the state pension plan actuaries for
maybe the actuaries would say it's tough to do if they're employed by basically the governor and GOMBI, Government's Office of Management and Budget, but maybe they would turn around and say, well, you're the Carney Barker because you're not telling the truth.
Yes.
I'd like to see, maybe we can get some of the actuaries who work with GOMBI to come on if they think we've got this wrong.
Well, I think TRS, the Teachers Retirement Fund, I think they attempted to say that this is wrong by, in the letter that they send to the governor, to say, here is what you're calling the certified amount. In that letter, they said, here is the certified amount using the Illinois statutes, i.e. the bogus amount that the SEC said was a bogus schedule, and here is the amount that we believe it should be, what the actuaries say it should be. So they went ahead and kind of said both of those things. Right. So then when he's saying he's fully funding the certified amount, is he's underfunding, he's using the lower balance, the statutory, he's not using the certified amount that is from the actuaries.
And on the Chicago side, if you're Mayor Brandon Johnson, you can look and see that you're running out. You got 5 funds. The teachers fund in Chicago runs out, some calculations, in 8 years. You've got 8 years left. The firefighters run out in 3 years, 3.5 years. That's not good. No. Again, that's saying in simpler terms, but the same thing that the actuaries are saying. And
what they're saying is, in that period of time, those funds are not going to have enough assets to pay the benefits. And then we're going to have to get, unless the state constitution is amended, we're going to have to get money from either the taxpayers, or we're going to have to cut other government and services and benefits to pay for the promised pension benefits.
And Moody's is saying the same thing, because they're looking at, they rate the city in terms of bonds and other debts, and they say Chicago is the nation's worst rated big city. They're just one level above junk status.
And I think they're being generous, because what they're doing is they're looking at, will the bonds that you're going to issue in the short term be able to be paid off? And based upon that, the pension plans are going to run out of cash in the near term, these bonds may be less likely to be able to be paid off. They're not looking at the government's overall financial situation. A lot of people go, and the governor has had numerous press conferences saying, hey, we got an increase in our bond rating. Well, all that means is that that the bond raters believe that we will have the cash to pay off the bonds. And a lot of the bonds are 5-year bonds. So in the next 5 years, we'll be able to pay them off. It doesn't look at the risk to the taxpayers of having to pay additional taxes to pay pension benefits, or the risk to the pensioners that their benefits might not get paid over time.
So it comes down to really different ways of saying the same thing. Say Chicago's in trouble. We've said it in other shows, they can't file for bankruptcy. The Illinois legislature could give them the power, Chicago and other cities across the state, to file for bankruptcy, but they haven't. If they do file for bankruptcy, it's in federal court, then they have the power to cut benefits, even if the Constitution's not amended. But that doesn't help the state, because the state seems unlikely to be able to have the power to file for bankruptcy, but they can amend the Constitution with the consent of the people. And if they amend the Constitution to cut the pension benefits, well, then they have some play. Then they have some leeway.
Well, but I would challenge you and say, why would the people give you that consent if they're told, we're balancing the budget, we're fully funding the pensions, we're being fiscally responsible? They are not being told that, hey, we don't have enough money to pay what we need to in the pension plans. We are really not balancing the budget because we're shorting the pension plans. If they knew that truth, and if they knew the truth that, well, if we went ahead and funded what we should, we have to cut X services, we have to cut Y benefits, we have to raise taxes. If they knew that, then there might be energy for people to say, we need to amend the Constitution.
Well, and they also might want to tell them that the current pensions for teachers in Illinois, out of the TRS fund, and some come from different funds elsewhere, some of the state, but teachers outside of CPS come from those funds. And those current pensions at retirement age start $59.60, and that starts at almost $80,000 a year. So you're cutting from $80,000, and most people in Social Security who don't have these defined benefit plans, don't work for the government, didn't work for the government, they're looking at retirement annual pensions of about maybe $18,000, $20,000, $22,000, 4 times as much for teachers. University workers, again, WirePoints tells us that's current pension starting at 59. For university workers, $70,000. And the past payout, if they live the expected time, that's $2 million. That's a lot of money. If you want to, again, the choice will be pay these pensions, which are rather high, cut the benefits, which maybe you could do, cut other current spending, or raise taxes. It's just the math. And the same thing with the city of Chicago, pension benefits of career city workers, police, $80,000 a year, firefighters, $97,000 average current pension at retirement. Again, at 59 or 60, everybody else, they start their retirement later in Social Security. So we have kind of a two-class society, people who work for government, people who don't. Is this fair? Is it fair?
It doesn't seem fair.
But the main thing you're saying, tell the people the truth.
Tell the truth.
Let them decide. They'll tell you what you should do. Cut pension benefits, cut current spending, raise taxes, and we haven't even gotten these complications like ERISA. ERISA doesn't cover public sector funds. Why doesn't it? Because if it did, there's a pension benefit guarantee, but that doesn't apply here. Folks, there just isn't time. There isn't time to correct all of the misrepresentations, all of the deception, all of the failure to inform. I mean, somebody should help us, right?
Yeah, under ERISA, and the reason that the state and local governments
And we
aren't...
only have a minute or two left, so...
So under ERISA, they just put one line in there that state and local governments are exempt. So what they're doing is they're saying state and local governments don't have to live by the same rules as corporations do.
Because your Congress decided that.
Because Congress decided that. So
But that could be amended. That could be
amended.
supplemented with other legislation.
Yes.
If you legislate something that's a mistake, you can correct it. If you have a constitution that's more onerous than you think for the great majority of the residents, you can amend the Constitution. You can amend the state constitution and the federal constitution. Look, if your legislators, they're the ones who have to get the ball rolling. The amendment of the Constitution has to be approved by the citizens, but it's got to, in most cases, maybe you can do it by petition. That's a little harder, but you can certainly do it by the Illinois legislature. They can certainly give the cities the right to file for bankruptcy. But the first step is for people to get engaged, to find out more about
And
truth
I would
in accounting.
interrupt you and say the first step is to tell them the truth about what's going on. So then they want to be engaged because they understand they need to be engaged.
Okay, and that's the name of your organization, Truth in Accounting.
Yes.
You spent almost all of your professional career dealing with studying, applying, and learning about accounting on the private sector, on the public sector. Same thing for finance, same thing for budgeting. This is your field, right?
Yep.
You are a national expert.
Yes.
You can't be modest here. I mean, when you say something, it should count, right?
Yeah. Yes.
I mean, have you ever sat down and talked with the governor?
No, I haven't.
See, she's available. You'd be happy to talk with the governor,
I'd be
would
happy
you?
to talk to the governor.
I mean, in a casual conversation, he may want to learn about this.
Yes.
He may want to get it right. Maybe Mayor Brandon Johnson wants to get it right.
Well,
Maybe Kwame Raoul, the Illinois Attorney General, wants to get it right.
They should be talking to their actuaries.
That's a good
They
start.
should be talking to their budget, the budget people. They should be talking to the legislative people because they have the numbers. And theoretically, as part of the remedies for the cease and desist order, he is supposed to be talking to those people and getting the right numbers.
You don't want to do something you promised you wouldn't do in the future again. You don't want to mess around with the Security and Exchange Commission. There are fines, there are penalties for the state and perhaps others. You don't want to mess with the SEC.
And what I've looked at and seen, I believe, I'm not an attorney, but I believe that the state is making the same type of wording that caused the SEC to charge them with securities fraud previously.
We got to get out. Thank you so much, Sheila Weinberg. Truthinaccounting.org. And there's another site for data.
DataZ.org, data-z.org.
Can they find out everything they need to know by just going to truthinaccounting.org?
Yes, and
you
then
can get
that
to
will
the,
link to the other
data
site.
site.
Yes.
So there's lots of data. There's data there for the large cities across the country. There's data for the 50 states. Illinois and Chicago rank in the bottom, what do you call them, sinkhole cities, sinkhole states?
Sinkhole cities, sinkhole states.
Okay, so you come back and inform us and the governor and the taxpayers of Chicago, of the state of Illinois, of the cities around the state.
That's our
More.
job.
That's your job. And you come back next week and every week to Public Affairs.